So cool. Tell me, how are you guys been doing? And I know I'm kind of doing a Thursday session after a very long time. We moved to a format where we were doing one session a week for the last couple of weeks now. But yes, this particular session really came because of a conversation that I had with one of my friends, who unfortunately at this point of time is going through a rough phase because of a retrenchment, okay, COVID related stuff, okay. And the kind of an experience that she's going through, that's where really the genesis of this whole conversation comes in from. So yeah, I think I should actually thank her because I know most of you would know that I run a HR consulting firm of my own, and we do come across a lot of people who are in between jobs at this point of time. But sometimes you just get so clinical about it because of late there are like so many people who have lost their jobs that it's kind of become like a sort of a habit, so to say, to see people without jobs, which in a way is good as well, which means that somewhere it's kind of getting normalized, unlike how it was earlier. But then saying that, yes, of course, with the hope that everyone sort of gets their dream job sooner than later. Okay. So let's look at this, okay? I know I kind of call this topic good and bad of a job loss, and I'm sure a lot of you must be wondering, can there even be like a good side to it? And I think we're going to be talking a little about both. One is, of course, about, and this is not a sort of a guideline in terms of how you should go about looking for a job. That's what I do for a profession. But yeah, saying that I think this platform is for a different reason. And I think here we're going to be focusing more in terms of how is it that you can handle, a job loss, or how is it that you can actually take it when all of a sudden you really get fired and then you're like all stressed and worked up about things, okay? And of course, a little about, I can't take the recruiter out of me. So yes, I am going to talk a little about that. But yes, I think we'll probably, I'll put up a session elsewhere, not on this platform, about that as well. Okay. So let me start with this question. Do you guys have any idea of what's really common between some of these names that I'm going to be spelling out for you? J.K. Rowling, Steve Jobs, Walt Disney, Oprah Winfrey, Thomas Alva Edison. They're legendary folks, right? Aren't they? Well, what really ties them common is that they all, at some point of time of their lives or other, got fired from their jobs, sometimes from their role, sometimes from the job that they were doing. And all of this happened before they became the people that we know them to be, okay? In fact, interestingly, Steve Jobs was actually fired from his own company, Apple, okay? And, he went on to set up Next, and then when then later he returned to Apple after almost like a decade later, and that's when came up all those innovations of iPod, iPhone, iPad. All of these that we talk about were actually after he returned to Apple. Okay, you'd laugh at this, but Walt Disney was actually fired because his editor actually thought that he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. How crazy can that be? Imagine we're talking about Walt Disney, okay? Forget about that. One more quick example. Oprah Winfrey was actually found unfit for television news, apparently, okay? So she was a reporter and she was kind of asked to move out of that role, and she was moved into something else, as in she was basically given a different portfolio altogether, okay? Now, isn't that surprising that all of these names that we have so heard of and we sort of look up to have gone through situations like these, okay? Now, there was a study which was done by Harvard, okay? They surveyed roughly about 2,600 odd executives. And there was a very interesting piece of information that came out of that survey which was done, which actually said that about 45% of those 2,600 people had at least at some point of time or the other faced one major career failure. It could either be, either they kind of goofing up at work or probably getting fired from their jobs. But in spite of that, 78% of them went on to become CEOs of organizations. Okay. So I think the point that I'm trying to drive is that it's not the end of the world, number one. Okay, so all right, I understand you got fired, but trust me, you aren't the only one, you aren't the first, and you are not going to be the last either. Okay, it's not the end of your world, it's not the end of your career, it's just one pit stop. Okay, and we all have dramas in our lives, right? And that's what life is all about. You will have great moments and you will have not so great moments. Okay, but what you also need to understand is that a layoff in most of the cases is actually driven by business decisions or economic conditions. Okay, so the first thing that you really need to do is to stop bashing up your own identity and your confidence in the process. Okay, most of the times what we see is we really get into a sort of a zone where we're depressed, where we're upset, where we're kind of bashing ourselves up. And I honestly, that's not needed, because this is not a reflection on your capability or on your performance. Okay. Now, there's one question that I have often asked myself. Okay. And the question is that why should our identity be based on things like your job, your designation? At the end of it, all of these are given to you externally, right? In the sense, it's not your definition of yourself, but a definition that someone else has given to you for somebody who's judging your capability, okay, or your abilities, which never made any sense to me. Okay, and there's this very beautiful speech that I hear very often. It's by Earl Nightingale. Shilpa knows about it because that's pretty much something that plays on my phone every morning when we are kind of out for a walk. Okay, it's a speech called "The Strangest Secret in This World." Okay, and in that he says that our mind is such a beautiful thing. It comes with, it comes as a standard equipment when we're born. Okay, there are a lot of things that come to you free of cost when you're born. Okay, like say for example, your mind, your dreams, your hopes, your desires, your ambitions, the intelligence that you're born with, etc. All of this comes free of cost. Your family, your friends, I mean, of course you make friends later on, but yeah, your children, everything comes to you free of cost. Okay, but you know what we do is, what we get free, we do not value. Okay, and we place value on things which do not come to us free of cost. It either takes your time, it either takes your money, or it takes your peace of mind, but that's what you consider important. But think about it, the things that you are given at birth, you cannot build them up again once you lose them. But saying that if you lose a job, you can pick another one. If your house burns down, you can build another house. If you basically lost all your money, you can still kind of make all that money later on. Okay, and surprisingly, somewhere I think we as a species, we have our priorities all screwed up. Okay, now invariably, the minute somebody meets someone else for the first time, the first thing that they ask is, what do you do? Okay, and invariably our what do you do answer is always that, okay, I work with so and so company as so and so. All right, but you are so much more than that definition, right? So I think you really need to sit and think about it. And for me, one of the first times that I actually had this realization was when I went on this trip to Kodaikanal. I was living at a place which is about an hour away from Kodaikanal, and not just an hour away. Actually, you kind of get to the foothills an hour from Kodaikanal away, and then from there you basically have to go 2.5 hills, okay, before you can reach this small cottage, which basically is all solar powered. It doesn't have any electricity. There was no gas stove, so we were literally cooking on fire using firewood. And very basic necessities, no television, no laptops, nothing at all. Okay, and I spent a good 2 weeks, and in fact I did like almost 3 trips there. And trust me, I think the realization that I had was that we have excess of everything. We don't need so much. Okay, I think your stress levels are automatically lesser if your lifestyles are like a lot more simpler. Okay, but that's for another day. Okay, now coming back to what happens when you get fired. Now, a question could be that, okay, I'm kind of talking about how frivolous this could be, but does that mean that you should not be feeling bad about getting fired? Oh, no, of course not. You are human after all. You are supposed to feel bad. If you say that, oh, it doesn't affect me, then I think you're probably not being true. Okay. It's a setback at the end of it. All right. It will hurt. But you know what? Where the problem starts is when you start brooding over it. Okay. I think the first thing that you need to do is to stop analyzing. The situation comes in, and what you start doing is, oh, did I do something wrong? Why did this happen to me? Why should I be going through this situation? Could I have done something right? Could it be that, somebody played politics against me? A zillion thoughts. You're kind of, contemplating and thinking about something which you can't do a thing about. How cruel can the management be towards me? Okay, and so on and so forth. But the point is, you know, as long as you're kind of living in the past and thinking about everything that went wrong, trust me, you will never be able to move ahead. Okay. So if there is a situation, the first thing that you need to do is to stop thinking and start doing. Okay. And trust me, with the right attitude, you will get over it just fine. And we spoke about such fantastic people, Steve Jobs, for that matter, Oprah Winfrey. I mean, these are all people that you really kind of look up to, right? If they could do it, we can as well. Okay. I distinctly remember having this conversation with somebody, I think a couple of years back. All right. He was in between jobs actually. Okay. And he had applied for some opportunity that we had posted. And while I was speaking to him, it just gave me such a positive vibe, stating that here when I asked him that, okay, fine. So what happened? Did you quit the job or, oh no, the organization was not doing too well. And they basically let go of all the key people who were there in the organization. But hey, you know what? Honestly, I'm kind of in a way glad that it happened because it gave me a chance to do all the things that I always wanted to. And I had been dreaming of taking a break for a very long time, which never really happened. So you could call it a forced break, but saying that, yes, I made the most of it. I kind of did some courses. I went traveling. I did this. I did that. And trust me, not even for a moment, I felt that he was guilty or sad about, being given the pink slip. All right. Now, he got placed. All right. And I'm so glad he did. Okay. And that's all because of his attitude. All right. So first and foremost, just remember, write it in your head that it's not a reflection of your ability or your caliber. Okay. And for a moment, even if you think it is, it's an experience and an opportunity for you to reflect upon it. All right. And when I say that, even for a minute, yes, I do not rule out the possibility that sometimes it could even be because of your own performance. Okay. But we will talk about that a little later. But 95% of case scenarios where people have lost their jobs have been purely because the organization either isn't doing too well or else perhaps economic downturn or whatever else. Okay. What you really got to think about is that how do you circumvent the situation in hand? All right. First and foremost, you think about what kind of organizations do you want to apply for? What kind of roles do you think you would be suitable for applying for? And you know what? Put yourself outside of your comfort zone and take a moment to think about what is it that really drives you? What are you really great at and what are your key strengths? Okay, the minute you do that, you automatically start opening up your horizons. What happens is for a lot of times, like say, for example, I have been in the recruitment space for like, say, since 2004 onwards, 2005 onwards. Okay, so it kind of has gotten ingrained into me. So for me, the very thought of stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something different kind of is scary. But hey, you know what? It's just because I keep experimenting with different things that probably I'm here sitting in front of you and having this conversation. Otherwise, me thinking about turning a speaker, oh my God, that was like beyond me. Okay. And I think that holds true for all of us when we really sit and start thinking about, okay, what are some of the things that we're great at? Some of them, some people could be great at cooking, some could have a skill of having conversations. So maybe could look at opportunities, relationship building conversations, make great sales professionals. So are there other possible opportunities that you could look at? You could also think about, whether you are open to looking at freelancing opportunities in the interim, something that you can probably fill that time with. Okay. So these things, basically, when you want to think about it, you really need to have a calm mind. When you have so much of clutter happening, you can't be thinking about all of it, right? Okay. Now, coming to the point that I spoke about first, that, sometimes it could also be because of maybe the stream that you are in, or perhaps it could be that you're not really too great, and it's okay if you're not great at what you do, because that only means that there is something else which you need to discover about yourself, which you are really, really great at. Because unless you're really good at something and passionate about something, you will never excel in that space. Okay, so the question that you need to ask yourself is, what is it that you need to do or qualify yourself on which makes you irreplaceable? And nothing is permanent, trust me. What you consider as irreplaceable today could become pretty replaceable a couple of years down. Automation has changed a lot of things. So many manual jobs are basically getting replaced with automation. Now, I think what you need to think about is to constantly keep growing and getting better than what you were yesterday. All right. What more can you do? What skills can you basically pick up? What can you get qualified in? You can actually utilize this time to like do so much more. Okay. You always keep complaining that you don't have time, don't you? You know. So that's something that perhaps you should really think about. Okay, your skills, your qualifications, what you're great at. It doesn't necessarily have to be like qualifications. Maybe there is somebody who's great with interior designing. You might want to just pick up a course in interior designing and see what you can do out of it. Start working part-time with some interior designers. Gives you some breakthrough out there, right? Experiment. It's one life. If you don't do it now, then when? Okay. Now that's more on the recruiter side of me talking. Okay, now coming back to how to cope with it. Of course, there is stress, as I said. Of course, there is going to be a lot of pressure. Of course, you have your EMIs to pay. All right. The first thing that we do is just close ourselves up totally. We do not want to go out and talk to anybody. Okay, you are either worried about yourself or you're worried about how your family is going to take it. Okay, at times I know of cases where people have not even revealed to their families that they have lost their jobs. Okay, but you know what, there is a reason why you call your family your family. Okay, they would be anxious seeing you the way you are. You would be anxious to think about what they would be going through. Okay, but when you stand together, it becomes a lot more easier. So talk to your family, open up to them, have open conversations. Okay, you really need to think about multiple things. Like, say for example, okay, let's assume that you're anticipating that it might take you at least 6 months or a year for you to find your right job. Okay, so which means that that is the time that you really have to kind of sit through and start thinking about how to manage your finances, because that's one thing which really kind of bothers you through that entire while. Okay, take a stock check of where you stand financially. Okay, sort out your finances. Figure out what liabilities do you have, how much balance do you have, how long would you be able to continue at that rate. Is there something more that you can do to sort of reduce those liabilities? Are there things that you can probably sell off or let go of? Can you move to a smaller house? If you think you need it, you can probably even consider taking a financial advice. Okay, and these are things that take time. Okay, but then saying that these are imperative, and I'm sure everyone would be supportive, because everybody knows that you are kind of going through a phase, right? What happens is you kind of just keep pushing these things too much later. You're not able to kind of take the right decisions at the right times, and eventually it comes to a stage where you're kind of running out of juice completely, and then you go into a panic mode, right, and decide to pick up anything and everything which is coming up your way. All right. Second, it always helps for you to have like a good set of friends or people who you can confide in. Non-judgmental people. When I say non-judgmental, I mean, see, usually families are very, very emotionally invested. Sometimes you just might need someone who's non-judgmental, who's just there to kind of listen to you, to help you vent out, listens attentively, and helps you release. Okay, and I don't think there's any shame or embarrassment in terms of letting people know that you have lost your job for whatever reasons. And because what happens is when you talk to people, you might just chance upon opportunities which you may not have even come across otherwise. You could have friends referring you to organizations or to places. Okay. You also need to consider, ways of de-stressing yourself, whether it is about practicing mindfulness or it's about, exercising. Don't go into like binge habits, like say you're smoking excessively, you're eating excessively, because that's the only way in which you feel that you're able to release your stress. Okay, because these things are not going to help you in any ways. Okay, take up those activities which will reduce your stress levels, because trust me, your body is actually acting in a threat mode. We have spoken about it a zillion times in the community about how your brain typically works. The minute you have an adverse situation, your brain actually thinks it's a threat. Okay, so you will have to make conscious effort to reduce your cortisol levels and that adrenaline rush in your brain. Okay, because these are things which can actually get you into a panic mode and sort of impair your ability to think. Okay, now you also need to make sure that you're doing what it takes to be visible out there. The most simplest things would be, of course, updating your resume, updating your LinkedIn, updating your resume on the portals, etc. And of course, biggest of all, activating your networks. Okay, for those of you who kind of shy away from being out there, please go ahead and connect with people who you think can help. And you know what? These things do not happen overnight. Okay, you'll have to consistently invest in those relationships or invest in your networks. And not just that, staying visible is an important part of any of these professional or personal platforms for that matter. When I say staying visible, what that means is you have every opportunity to actually go out there onto, say, sites like LinkedIn, etc., and put up articles, engage with other people's posts, etc. And that's how you create your visibility and let people know that, hey, you know what? I'm an expert at this. I'm sharing my opinion because I know what I'm talking about. Okay. And these could be like some small, tiny things. But then saying that, I think important, because the sooner you start doing all of this, you will basically start figuring out that you needn't be so worried, and your confidence levels will also go up, your self-esteem will go up. Okay. Now, this is something which I almost tell every person that I come across who is kind of having a break in career, is that when you go in for an interview, for God's sake, you do not have to downplay yourself. Leave all those emotions of guilt and low self-esteem outside, okay? And when you're talking to them, be confident and tell them about how you actually utilize this time to either develop a new skill or to pick up a new qualification, or how you kind of utilize that time, doing pro bono activities, or maybe consulting or freelancing assignments. Okay, it's not something that you need to be ashamed of. All right. And I think I always feel that situations happen because somewhere maybe the universe really wants you to take that break. Okay. Now, this is something which is from the perspective of a person who's actually going through that situation. Okay. It is, the way you deal with getting fired or getting laid off is just similar to how you would deal with any adverse situation. There's no rocket science to it. In fact, what happens is that a lot of people, I mean, I'm not talking about the people who are going through it. I'm talking about someone who's looking at it from outside. If you hear of someone having a health ailment, you have people who'd be like, oh my God, how sad, in the sense, I mean, the person is going through it. Oh, look how bravely is the person taking it. Okay. We as a human race, we've started only giving the title of adversity to things like these, where either a person is dying, or probably the person is not keeping well, or has had an accident, etc. But trust me, it's been scientifically proven that a person who actually loses his or her job goes through the same amount of stress, same amount of pain as he or she would if they were to be diagnosed with an illness. Okay, so this last bit that I'm talking about is from a perspective of families of people who have lost their jobs, or friends. Okay. I think we've seen different kinds of scenarios. I mean, I remember having someone in my neighborhood who lost his job, and the wife made his life miserable for the whole year until he did not land himself a job. Okay, I was just only surprised that he didn't die of a heart attack between that 1 year. Okay, for God's sake, guys, it could have happened to anyone. Okay, if somebody you love is going through a situation like this, I think you really need to kind of up your ante and give that person the confidence that yes, it's okay. It is just a passing phase. It's not for eternity. It's not for always. Okay, please do not make their lives miserable by hounding them or questioning their capability or their caliber, for that matter, because tomorrow it could just come back to you. Okay, you are screwing up the relationship. All right. Second, if you are the spouse or the partner or probably a member of the family, if there is some way in which you can contribute, because obviously the biggest burden that you have is basically financial. I think these kind of times are the times when you all really need to work as a team, okay, and not in silos. All right. If there is any possible way in which you can contribute to relieving the stress of that person, whether it is financially, emotionally, whichever way possible, just go ahead and do that. All right. This one is basically for friends. All right. Now, in your desire to be helpful, do not start sympathizing with the person. Arey yaar, bahut kharab hua tere saath, in the sense aisa nahi karna chahiye tha. What you're doing is actually adding fuel to the fire instead of being of help. If you can help, help. Otherwise, just shut up. Okay, seriously. And I'm going to just quickly look at a couple of comments which are coming in here. Hold on. I think I just saw one coming in. Apart from applying for jobs, I started working out more as it helps reassuring you can still achieve targets. A lot of volunteering work helps in building confidence. Mano, I'm so, so, so proud of you. I think that's exactly what you need to do. And that's what I was talking about, that, do whatever calms you down. Okay. Do whatever makes you realize that this is not your only identity. Okay. This is just a fraction of your life, just a part of your life. It's not forever. All right. And I'm so glad that you're doing that. Okay. So that's what it is. A lot of times, in our effort to be of help, we have very weird notions of trying to help people, like how you have some relatives who are like, oh, how sad, why did this happen to you? They actually kind of make you wallow in self-pity. All right. So please, if you are that friend, please don't do it. Okay. You're just making things worse. And if you are someone who is impacted by it, then I think if the person is refusing to change, then it's better off that you don't have that person around you, to be very frank, as harsh as it may seem. All right. Take this opportunity to discover your true capabilities. What are you great at? What can you do better than what you did earlier? What are some of the things that you've always had on your wish list, but you never got a chance to kind of do them? Okay. And maybe this is the opportunity that the universe is providing for you to actually spread your wings and find the real you. Okay. So yeah, I hope this helped. To whosoever is going through the situation or knows somebody. To be very frank, this is not only for someone who's going through the situation, because of late there are so many people who are going through this, going through a similar scenario, that sometimes it even gets to be overwhelming in terms of how is it that you're supposed to handle it? What do you tell? What do you say to a person who's going through the situation? And I think we all need to become a little more empathetic and helpful. Keep an eye out for opportunities which could be of help to someone who has lost his job. Okay. And if you have any suggestions to give to that person about what else, I mean, because a lot of times a person outside knows you better in terms of what your capabilities are. Maybe if somebody would have come and told me that, hey, you know what, you can become a speaker 5 years back, I would have said, oh, really? Are you crazy? But you know what? That's what it is. I think people outside would know things a lot more. They would be more observant about what your strengths are. And if you can help somebody spot their strengths, I think nothing like it. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, if you need any more information, or if you just want to kind of, talk, please feel free to reach out. Okay. And let me just quickly remind you, since I'm anyways doing this midweek session, that we have this amazing lady, Meera, who's coming in. She's the co-founder of an NGO called Where Are India's Children? Okay. It's an NGO which actually works towards creating awareness and to encourage adoption. She herself is an adoptive mother. And November basically is the Adoption Awareness Month. All right. So we're doing this session on the 13th, which is this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Okay. The post is already there in the group. So do take a look at it and do join in. Okay. Take care. And thank you so much for coming in. And, look forward to your comments on this post. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.